Okay. Thanks so much for coming to hear me talk today. My name is Madeline Lutz, and I am a CPM here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I love midwives, I love midwifery, and I am passionate about bringing the midwives model of care to more American families. So that's what I'm here to talk about. So I was born at home, and I have a big family. I have 6 brothers who were born in various locations. Some of them were born at home, some of them were born in hospitals, some of them were born at birth centers. And so when I was growing up, natural birth was something that I was really familiar with. I was used to seeing babies. My mom breastfed around me. My cousins had been born at home. A lot of my friends had been born at home. So natural birth and natural mothering was commonplace. So when I grew up and got into my 20s and friends of mine started having babies, I was really kind of surprised by their birth experiences. First of all, they were all having their babies at the hospital. Many of them were being induced, and a lot of them were having C-sections. And, I wasn't just surprised, I was kind of bummed. And when I started looking more into it, I realized that what I had grown up thinking as normal was actually pretty abnormal, because less than 2% of babies are born outside of the hospital. So home birth midwives serve less than 2% of the population. And why is that? I don't think it's because women don't want what we have. We've all seen, hospital billboards and things these days that say, birth suites at such and such hospital and natural birthing center attached to such and such hospital. And any doulas here know that birth plans are becoming a thing that they're talking about at hospitals. And so, even if hospitals aren't actually acting on these things, they're at least giving lip service to the fact that women do want to be in control of their experiences. Women do want choices and options. So I don't think it's that women don't want what we have. I do think that we have a visibility problem. It's not all that unusual for me to be at a party or, just out and about and have someone ask what I do. And when I say I'm a midwife, they say, "Oh, I didn't know you guys still existed." Or they'll say, "Is that like a doula?" And no offense to doulas, I love doulas and I love what doulas do, but just what that alerts me to is the fact that most people in our culture don't know that if you're a pregnant woman, you can have a baby at home with a midwife. So I think if there was more of us, then more people would have heard of us and know that we do exist. And the fact that having your baby at home with a midwife would become a more viable and realistic option for pregnant women in this country. So what are we going to do about having to be that we're bummed about 98% of women's birth experiences in this country? Well, the answer, of course, is what we do. The answer is the midwives model of care, and the answer is more midwives. So how are we going to make more midwives? Well, I think that there's one thing that is holding us back from an influx of new midwives. And I think that one thing is the 24/7 on-call lifestyle typical of home birth midwives in America today. So what is a 24/7 on-call lifestyle? Well, a lot of you guys in here are probably familiar with it, but when you have a client, you have to go on call for her pretty much from the time she's 37 weeks pregnant to the time that she's 43 weeks pregnant. And then add to that all the clients that you have in a month. Add to that all the clients that you have for the year, and that turns into a lifestyle of being on call. So when you're on call, you can't make commitments to anyone other than your clients. You can't tell your neighbor that you'll pick up her kids from the school bus so that they can go to a doctor's appointment. You can't tell your daughter that you will babysit for your grandkids so that they can go to a concert or a wedding. You can't go on vacation unless you plan those vacations, at least 10 months in advance, where you're not going to take clients with due dates over a 2-month period, so that you have 2 weeks off in the middle of that time so that you are truly off call. But even then, one of your clients' waters might break before 36 weeks, or somebody has a miscarriage, and you have to be there to support them anyway. You have to take your cell phone to yoga. You have to drive separately to a bunch of events. You have to keep your phone on the table when you're out to dinner with your girlfriends, or on a date with your husband, or in my case, when you're on a date with a guy that you're trying to convince that joining you in this lifestyle is a good idea. You can't go on a hike. You can't train for a triathlon or a marathon. You can't turn your phone off after a 36-hour labor to get a full night's sleep because you have a couple other ladies who are in the window. You might miss your son's high school graduation. You might miss your daughter's 10th birthday party. You might miss Christmas 3 years in a row. And all for what? So that one woman can be guaranteed that one midwife will be there for her birth. So how this idea that the one-on-one, woman helping woman model of care has become the ultimate value in midwifery care, I don't know. Because the fact is, the differences between the medical model of care and the midwifery model of care are vast. And those differences stem from the fundamental differences of what we believe birth is. The medical model sees labor and birth in pregnant women as a problem to be solved and a disaster waiting to happen. The midwifery model sees birth as a transformative experience, as a powerful experience. Many of you in here probably believe, like Barbara Katz-Rothman says, that birth is not only about making babies, birth is about making mothers, strong, competent, capable mothers who trust themselves and know their inner strength. So what we do is important. And it's not just about making mothers. I think birth is also about making fathers. Like I said, I have 6 brothers, and so I'm also passionate about the birth experience for dads. And I think birth is also about making families. And what about the babies? Like, I'm one of those people who actually believes that if all babies were born into a room full of love hormones rather than a room full of fear hormones, that the world would actually be a better place. So midwifery care and what we do is more than just that one-on-one bond. Every one of you probably has a story. Most midwives have a story of walking into a birth where they didn't expect to be. They're somebody's backup or whatever. You've never met this woman ever before in your life. And those births end up awesome. And when midwives tell me about these stories, they always have a light in their eye. And it's almost like they're a kid again and remembering like why they fell in love with this work in the first place. Because every midwife has a gift. And the gift that we all have is that we can walk into a room of a laboring woman, and whether we have known that woman for 9 years, for 9 months, or for 9 minutes, we are going to connect with her, we are going to bond with her, because we believe that what's happening is the most important thing in the world right now. It's because we believe that birth is an experience that is important and matters, and this woman matters, and this baby matters, and this family matters. So the one-on-one model of care is not the most important aspect or even a necessary aspect of midwifery care. But it does demand the on-call lifestyle. So I think that it does make it the most limiting factor in creating more midwives. So like I said, when I was in my 20s, I saw my friends having these experiences, and I had always thought that birth was something to look forward to rather than something to fear. And I was seeing them, at best, not get the fullness of the experience. And at worst, have unnecessary surgeries, sometimes multiple unnecessary surgeries. So I wanted to do something about it once I looked into it and saw, like I said, it was 98% of women in the country, not just my friends and family. So I decided to go to midwifery school. And I was a single woman. I am a single woman. And so I had to pay, I wasn't in a position, I had to pay bills, I had to, work. And so I wasn't in a position to do an apprenticeship. I couldn't be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 to 5 years. So but I knew I wanted to do something. So I started school and paid for my academic program by working full time. And I got my clinical experience wherever I could pick it up, until ultimately I realized that I was going to have to take some time to go get primaries and be on call for a while. So I borrowed a whole bunch of money and I packed up all my stuff and I moved across the country to work at a birth center for 18 months to finish my training. The contract that I signed at that birth center said that I was to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire time that I was there. Which meant that I couldn't be any farther away than an hour from the birth center for the whole 18 months, and I had to have my phone on at all times. So when I signed that, I didn't love the idea, but I realized I was familiar enough with midwifery and the midwifery world and community that I realized that that was something that I was going to have to do. So, I did it. So I got out there. And within 3 weeks, I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do this. Because I don't think that you can really know what it's actually like to be on call until you actually experience it. Because, you have 4 or 5 clients due in a month. So you're only going to get called 4 or 5 times. The other 25 days, you're going to get to do what you want to do. But that constant, always having to have a backup plan, never being able to promise anybody anything, not being able to go for a hike in the mountains and get nature, or follow other passions or other relationships to give them what I thought they deserved in my life, it just felt heavy, it felt suffocating. So I called my parents and, I had been there 3 weeks literally, and I said, Mom, Dad, this is not gonna happen, I'm coming home, I can't do it. My dad was like, you can't quit, Madeline, you've worked so hard for this already, you're gonna be a great midwife, you can do anything for 18 months, you have to stay. So I thought, sure, I can do anything for 18 months, but what does my future look like? And when I looked out into my future, what I saw was solo practice, home birth midwives, on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When I would be in a group of midwives, the conversation would inevitably turn to how stressed, jokes, how we're all stressed out, our adrenal glands are shot, we have terrible eating and exercise habits because of our lifestyle, and that was just not what I wanted. Then there would be talk about not sleeping for however many hours or how many births you did last week, and just like it was a badge of honor or something, and I'm sitting there thinking this is crazy. I don't think this is healthy. I don't think that, and I know for a fact it's not what I want, but I don't think it's healthy. I mean, self-care is something that midwives preach, but they absolutely do not practice. So I decided, so I saw that and I was like, okay, no. But lucky for me, I was raised in a family that I was taught to think outside of the box. And lucky for me, I was at a birth center where I had 2 other students that I could use, work with. So I went to those 2 other girls, and I had only been there 3 weeks, but anybody who is a student or used to be a student knows, you make pretty quick bonds with midwifery students that you're training with. And so we had become friends over the 3 weeks, so they didn't want me to leave. And I said, listen, gals, if something's got to give. I mean, if we don't figure out a way for me to get some kind of a break in this time, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna go home. So they, of course, were on board. They had been there longer than I had, and they were ready to get some sort of a break. So I talked to the managers of the birth center, and I asked if I could present a new system at a staff meeting. So they said that I could, so I went home and I worked on charts and graphs and schedules, and I was, all different kinds of systems to try to figure out something that would work for everybody. And it came up with a system where each client would be assigned 2 primary students, and who would switch off seeing her at prenatal care. And then when she went into labor, one of those 2 students would be guaranteed to be at her birth. So there would always be 2 students on call and one would be off. So I presented this at the meeting, and it was met with, okay, I don't see how this isn't going to work, but that's not really what midwifery is. And part of our jobs as preceptors is to teach you what it is to be a midwife, and that's not what midwifery is, and that's not what as a midwife, that's not what your life is going to be like. So what I'm hearing is, okay, Madeline, good idea, but you just might not be cut out for this. You don't have the passion or the dedication that real midwives have. And that felt really bad to me, because I know what my passion is. I love moms, I love babies, I love dads, I love birth, I love midwives, I love midwifery care. I think it matters. But I think I matter too. And I think we all matter too. And so even though they didn't, encourage me in this new system and think it was a great idea, they also didn't say no. And I think part of the reason they didn't say no is because this particular birth center had had a really hard time holding on to apprentices since they had been open. And so they knew, they were going to lose another one if we didn't put this into practice. So they said we could try it, and we did. And sure enough, everybody was happy. For the next 18 months, the clients were happy, the birth center was happy, and all of us students were happy, and we got 1 week off call every 4 weeks for the next 18 months, and I finished my training. So what that did was, open my eyes to the fact that there could be another way. And not just that, but there, could be a better way. And that better way has since become my passion project. Believe in Midwifery. BelieveInMidwifery.com. So what is the better way? The better way is group practice and midwives having regularly scheduled time off call. So what are the benefits to midwives? Pretty obvious. We would get to take breaks. We would get to go on spontaneous camping trips with our neighbors or spend a day at the lake with our friends or family. We would get to always make our dentist appointments or parent-teacher conferences. We would get to take a bath or have a massage without our cell phone on. We would get to have a full night's sleep after a long birth. Or a short birth that's difficult for another reason and we just need some time to breathe. Also, not only that, but the weight of responsibility of our clients would no longer be solely on our shoulders, but we would have other people to share it with. Benefits to mothers. Maybe a little less obvious, but no less real, and ultimately more important. I'm going to say that again, actually, because this is not about us. This is about them, and the benefits to mothers are huge. What mothers are going to get is happier, healthier, less stressed out, more well-rested, safer, and more effective midwives. Not just that, but they're also going to actually be guaranteed that they're going to have a midwife that they know and who is familiar with them and their history at the birth. Because as much as we try to tell these women that we're going to be there for them, like, life happens. We get in a car accident. You have 2 ladies in labor at the same time. Your kids are sick. You have a death in the family and have to go out of town. There's traffic. Like, that stuff happens, and it's not all that unusual. And when that happens, those women get a midwife that they've never met before in their lives, most of the time. Occasionally, we have a backup who they've met once. But most of the time, these women get a midwife that they have never met before in their lives. And like I said, those births turn out great because we're midwives and what we do is good work for these women. But how much better would it be for them if they knew that they were going to have someone that showed up who they were familiar with and they knew was familiar with them and their history and their chart and their wants and their needs and their desires. And then there is the benefits to students. The benefits to students is really similar to the benefits of midwives, but it's hard to be on call all the time. And it's really hard to be on call all the time when you're not getting paid. Not just hard, but prohibitive. There's a lot of people who don't start midwifery apprenticeships because it is impossible to do. So if students had some actual time off where they were able to have another job that wasn't necessarily in the birth world, a lot of students are doulas, and that is just more on call and more stress and more everything else and contributes to burnout additionally. But if we could figure out a way for this, well, we have figured out the way, we just have to work together, but if we all had the time to give that gift that I was talking about, that we all possess, and a lot of other women possess too, that either do start and quit because of the lifestyle or don't start because of the lifestyle, if that gift was actually given time to breathe and relax, rejuvenate, rather than what a lot of us do, which is suffocate it and work it to death, then I think that we would have more midwives. When Ina May Gaskin and the farm midwives were driving across the country, it was the late 1960s, early 1970s, and a typical medical birth had women showing up at the hospital. They were tied down, drugged to the point where they couldn't remember their experiences, and their husbands were being kicked out of the room. Ina May and her ladies on the caravan, said, no, that's not how it's going to be for us. We can do this ourselves. We can help each other, just like women have been doing for millennia. So it was women, a group of women, helping out women. The one-on-one wasn't a thing. In the early stages of the Farm Midwifery Center, when a woman called as she was in labor, she didn't know which midwife was going to show up. But what she did know is that she was going to get a midwife that was fresh, a midwife that was competent, a midwife that was compassionate, and a midwife who trusted her instinctive ability to give birth in the best way that she knew how. So it was women helping women. Like the one-on-one model wasn't how they did it back then. I actually had a chance to go talk with some of the farm midwives a couple of weeks ago, and when I asked them about this, and about their impact on birth, because they had a huge impact on birth, not just on home birth. Obviously they had a big impact on home birth. Like, I don't think I would be standing here if it wasn't for them. I don't know if my mom would have had home births if it wasn't for them. So their impact on home birth was huge, obviously. But they had a huge impact on birth culture in general, because women are no longer being tied down, drugged to the point where they can't remember their experiences and having their husbands kicked out of the room. So when I tried to talk to them about this and praise them, thank them for their starting this movement and, this impact that they had on birth, they wouldn't accept the praise. They were so cool, they were so humble. They, said, no, like, we can't take all the credit. Like, there were midwives all over the country that were, standing up and revolting against this medical model. And of course there were. And I'm not going to downplay what all of the other midwives have done, because if you do believe, like we do, that birth is this important experience, then everyone counts. Even impacting your just client base is a big impact. But the fact is, we haven't heard of all of those other midwives. And the farm midwives have had a bigger impact than the rest of them. And so I pressed the issue, and finally they agreed that yes, they had an impact. But the reason they said that they have been able to have the impact that they have had, and the reason that they have been able to be in practice for as long as they have, which is over 40 years, is because, and this is their words, they took breaks, they had the support of their community, and they worked together in a group. So it's our turn now. And if we want to have any kind of impact like they had, because there's still things to be done. I mean, women are no longer being tied down, drugged to the point they can't remember their experiences and having their husbands kicked out of the room. But what is happening is that over 30% of women in this country are being tied down and having their babies delivered by C-section. Many of them unnecessary and many of them repeated. So if we want to impact that, and I want to impact home birth too. I mean, I want to have more than 2% of people have their babies at home. But also birth culture in general, if we want to have any impact like they did, we have got to stop working alone. We have to start working together in groups. We have to garner the support of our communities, and we have to take breaks. I think if we can do those three things, we can make midwifery more attainable for students, more sustainable for midwives, which would ultimately make more midwives, and then I think we can actually make the world a better place.